Welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore Mercury's retrograde through the free-spirited Sagittarius, which begins on the 26th of November and goes through to the 15th of December. I'm going to explain what a Mercury retrograde is, why in the sign of Sagittarius Mercury is technically in its detriment, but also what the start of the year represented in terms of Mercury, because it was retrograde in Sagittarius as we burst into year 2024. But it was also very close to Mars, the planet of thrust, desire and action, particularly in Sagittarius, but both were squared off by Neptune. A very dreamy influence, but also one that can create distortion. And the sign of Sagittarius is about higher values, philosophies, can be about international affairs, can be about travel, can be about distribution. And all of those areas have been at times afflicted this year. So that affliction, is it going to become that much more intense with this particular event? But also I'm going to share with you what the themes of Mercury are through its rulership of the sign of Gemini, where it's airy and mutable, but also through the sign of Virgo, where it's very much about precision and it's an earth sign and wants to get tangible benefits from its energies. How do we use their influence through this event? Also, what are the degrees involved? What is a pre-retrograde shadow? What is the post-retrograde shadow? How long does the whole process take? Is it true that we shouldn't really do anything like buy a car, sign a contract, go on a date, start a new job with Mercury retrograde? Is that true or not? I'm also going to share with you the two event charts from a solar perspective. So when Mercury exactly goes retrograde at 22 degrees and 30 minutes. At that exact point, I'll share with you the solar event chart, Mercury in house 9. But in terms of the natal event chart, Mercury is actually in Sagittarius in house 3, which is a bit ironic because that, of course, is a very Gemini influence. Also, another piece of the energy influence in this event is Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, is retrograde, broadly opposite Mercury, in the sign of Gemini. So it's a mutual receptivity, or is it a greater potential for confusion? I'm then going to go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect for each of your signs, not just through this next 19 days, but right through to the 3rd of January when Mercury emerges from the post-retrograde shadow. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. Thank you for joining me. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. We have found that 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. Please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. I'd really be grateful if you would also like and share my videos, because it all sends a message to YouTube. Because I do weekly videos, they perceive the channel as producing content with lower view times. If you look at those shorter videos, people stay pretty well to the end. So the hold time is very good. But please help to influence the algorithm by interacting as much as you can. We're up to 128,000 subs now. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. If we can get it to 130 by the end of the year, perhaps a little bit ambitious, but I would be really delighted if we could achieve that, particularly with all the health issues I have had when I have kept working despite not being very well. Now, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consulting astrologer. Please see the link below. You can read the testimonials. I don't edit these. Discover what other people have found working with me. You can also support the channel by buying a chart for year 2025. They're great value. You also get a free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic forecast. And 30% off, you also get your Life Roadmap report. Now, the personal horoscope reports are totally unique for each person they're produced for. The Life Roadmap report gives you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far and a much more intimate understanding of who you are. The forecast, of course, helps you to navigate the next year. If you don't know your time, you can order the solar option. If you prefer to work with whole sign astrology, I also offer that option too, and you'll still get the free gifts. Please see the link below for more. And if you're a patron, you can get your Mercury Retrograde download. You can become a patron for $3 a month, and I'm so grateful for all the patrons we have got. So the big picture is that Mercury moved into Sagittarius on the 2nd of November. But actually Mercury was in Sagittarius at the start of this year, very close to the planet of action, Mars. Now that combination is really exciting, you know, but Mercury was retrograde. So the impatience of Mars in Sagittarius, which is a very sporty influence, applying to Mercury means that the details at times could have been a bit frustrated. Let's not bother with the details, let's just go for it, let's make something happen. But because they were squaring up broadly to Neptune, Neptune is very much about spirituality, can be very idealistic, it's a shimmering, mesmeric energy, but it also can be very distorting. The sign of Sagittarius is supposed to be about higher values, philosophies, can be to do with things like the rule of law, but the distortion energy from Neptune at the start of this year has meant that communication, whether it's been about international affairs, whether it has been about international trade, whether it has been about people's particular philosophies, whether it's been religious inclinations, whether it's been to do with more traditional instincts, more progressive agendas, all of these things are battling with that energy of Neptune, which can create an unreality. And I have said this before, I do believe we live now fully in the post-truth era. So it's not so much to do with facts, it's to do with people who speak the loudest and regularly repeat a message which people want to hear, and that raises their hopes, creates an enthusiasm and optimism, but the reality may not always stack up. And this is playing out in so many different ways, in so many different spheres of life. So one of the things we need to be very, very mindful of is, yes, there can be snags, like, you know, a trusted domestic appliance that we've had for a long time can go on the blink, or a computer that has really been steady, very, very steady, suddenly just melts and we need a new one. Or it could be that a contractual matter that has been part of the picture this year may seem to get even more bogged down, confused and conflated. Or if we're trying to complete on the purchase or sale of a house, the legal strands of that can also be afflicted by Mercury's retrograde. So we know all of those things are possible. But I want you to know that Mercury in Sagittarius can also be really fantastically inquisitive. It can be very optimistic, but it can also be a little bit over-optimistic, to the point that that enthusiasm, because of the rulership of the sign of Sagittarius is Jupiter, Jupiter can be about good fortune and belief, but that belief can go all the way to dogmatism. So when people are very bombastic, look, this is the facts, and it perhaps isn't always validated in quite the way, because in Sagittarius, I'll speak, no one's going to stop me having an opinion, particularly with Mars right at the start of this year, and that's created an environment of a lot of competing ideas, but not necessarily backed up with solid information. So as we go into this retrograde, the process began with the pre-retrograde shadow on the 7th of November. That was when Mercury was at 6 degrees and 23 minutes. Now, the retrograde begins at 22 degrees and 30. When the retrograde comes to an end on the 15th of December, it's back to that 6 degrees and 23. When we get to the end of the post-retrograde shadow, guess what? We're getting back to the 22 degrees and 30 minutes. So that's how it happens. The post-retrograde shadow is the point when Mercury gets back to when the retrograde began. Pre-retrograde period is the point when to at the maximum extension of the retrograde, which is in the middle of December. So if you have got planets in Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius or Pisces between 6 and 22 degrees, the angularity of those influences, Gemini in opposition, Virgo and Pisces squares, and Sagittarius conjunctions, are going to be particularly flagged. But I also want to tell you this, as this event begins, so the Sun is in Sagittarius, arcing back to Mars in Leo. This is one of astrology's most dynamic, energizing and enthusing links. If ever there was an aspect that's priming us up to be passionate about something we're interested in, it's this. So one of the big things that comes up, as I mentioned before, is that you will hear people say, don't commit to anything with Mercury retrograde. Now, I think it is true to be very mindful of its influence, but I think it's more not to do with the broad theme, it's more to do with your natal chart. So if Mercury retrograde was, say for example, being impacted by Saturn, that probably wouldn't be a good time to sign a contract, start a new job, go on that travel plan. But because Mercury retrograde, the whole process takes about 10 weeks, including the pre and post retrograde shadow, we can't stop 3 or 4 times a year for 10 weeks. But there are some people who do think like that. But I feel that it's important to understand that Mercury, merchant, marketing, it's about business. And it's about getting things done, but of course it's about the conversation. So if we wanted to achieve something with Mercury in the sign of international affairs, and it was to do with export and import, selling things, buying things, then clearly we do need to scrutinise the detail with great care. And that's where Mercury's precision energy through Virgo come in to assist us. So if we take the time not to rush, that we don't let that over enthusiasm that could come from Mars's link to the Sun, and also Mercury being in Sagittarius, affect us too much, we can still make progress. But we could, for example, rethink a travel plan. If we're someone who never had the opportunity to study when we were younger, we could sign up for that online course, get that degree, or apply to a full-time residential course. Or perhaps learn a language, learn an instrument, do something which expands our world by revisiting the way we thought in a way which is limiting, self-limiting. So if we can reprogram our thinking and philosophies in a more factual way and actually do more research to make sure that what we believe is true to be right, we can turn this Mercury retrograde into a success. But those Mercury themes, so through the sign of Gemini, it is of course an air sign, mutable as is Virgo and Sagittarius, very flexing, but it is about those fast, quick communications, the winged messenger, the intermediary, those conversations we have with neighbours, with siblings, online all the time. You know, really I feel that Mercury in Gemini is the planet which rules modern life, you know, very much to do with technology. And of course Mercury in modern astrology is an androgynous planet, and that also fits the time we're in, where there's lots of flexing. People are responding to situations in a different way at a different time, very Gemini-like. But Virgo, also as I mentioned, mutable, but it's an earth sign. So here what Mercury wants to achieve is something tangible. It's not the expression of the idea, it's the detailing, it's the discrimination, it's the sifting through the information. But it also has a desire to help, to serve, not be servile. And people who have Virgoian influences often work in health, in distribution, service industries, anything to do with diet and purity. So we can use the quick energy of Gemini, the precision energy of Virgo, but we need to apply it to the sign of Sagittarius, which can be impatient and can want to brush off the detail because it wants to invest in essentially, in a way, opining free of any scrutiny, because it's where we're very invested in that particular belief system. So we're going to need to be very careful about the details. Now, what about the two event charts? So the solar event chart sees Mercury in house 9, of course, but it's opposite Jupiter, the ruler of the sign of Sagittarius, ironically in house 3. So that's in retrograde. That creates some mutual receptivity, but it also creates a huge potential for over-egging the pudding. We also have Mercury in a quincunx, a 150-degree angle to Uranus. We've got Christmas coming up. If you've set a budget and you want to stay within it, then that's an aspect that could test it, because it can make us more impulsive about resources. But Mercury is also in a square like it was at the start of the year. It's broader with Neptune. So we're still seeing a lot of claims. What's the reality? That's something that we've all got to be on a mission to unearth. But the biggie is that Mars is in opposition with Pluto. So although it's forging that stunning alliance with the Sun, which is very vigorous and very expansive and really sparking up our passion and enthusiasm, because Mars is opposite Pluto, that peaked on the 18th of November, and it's going to happen again on the 3rd of January, but this time between the signs of Leo and Aquarius. So Mars opposite Pluto is an aspect which can be very much to do with force. It can be to do with leverage. It can be to do with a might is right attitude. So if you encounter someone, perhaps you're having a drink and just having a chat with someone, and suddenly it turns into a bit more of a debate, or perhaps it's online, just be aware that you could encounter someone who's very, very invested in dominating the conversation. Whether their, credo is different or not is not really the issue, because everyone's got a right to their own opinion. Have they? Clearly not, as far as some people are concerned. Now, the natal event chart is fascinating. Because the ascendant is in Libra, it all flips. It's a mirror. So Mercury goes to the 3rd house, very Gemini-like. Jupiter goes to the 9th, very Sagittarius-like. The quincunx with Uranus goes to 8th. So we may find ourselves with that particular aspect talking or thinking about contracts, shared resources or investments where things don't quite marry. The square between Mercury and Neptune in the event chart natal is 3rd, 6th. Again, if we're careless with the details, that can be an issue. But I also want to tell you about the aspects that are upcoming. So Mercury repeats an opposition to Jupiter because of both of them being in retrograde, which is exact on the 4th of December. But watch out for that from the end of November through to the 6th of December. So particularly if you are traveling anywhere, or you're buying or selling or negotiating a contract. There is a Mercury cazimi on December the 6th, and clearly that's an inferior conjunction because Mercury is retrograde. So the Sun magnifies the qualities of Mercury in a very positive way, but Mercury sits between the Sun and Earth. But if we did want to really penetrate into a subject, a topic, or our thinking, and really look at it in a humble way, we could reconfigure our knowledge in some big way on the 6th of December. Now, Mercury is going to square Saturn twice in this particular phase. It's already done that, but it's going to be exact on the 7th of December and the 27th of December, but also broadly from the 4th to the 9th of December and the 23rd to the 30th of December. So Mercury square Saturn is an aspect which can be a crusher of optimism, particularly with Saturn in the sign of Pisces. So we could see the people who've been making the big claims, whoever it is, governments, individuals, entrepreneurs, we're going to see their claims scrutinised in a massive way through the 4th to the 9th of December, and also at the end of December. So expect some big stuff to come into the open. We've then got a repetition of Mercury opposite Jupiter for the third time, because both Mercury squared the Saturn and was opposing Jupiter in November, got it again towards the end of this year. So that's the hope. The Mercury squaring the Saturn is perhaps the reality. So we need to be really realistic in order to deal with this. But if you are heading off somewhere, then clearly pack some extra things in case a few food or drinks, or an overnight bag in case your journey is interrupted. If you are personally driving somewhere, just be aware there could be traffic jams, there could be weather conditions that influence things. And as always, technology is so powerful these days, whether it is to do with banking systems, whether it is to do with our own personal technology, updates, downtimes. Fraud is a massive thing these days, isn't it? Very often, if you get a text message or an email, it could be from a nefarious source, and that's where that Neptune, shimmering, distorting, cheating, deceptive energy is something we need to be particularly careful of. So if you're buying stuff for someone online in the run-up to Christmas, be meticulously careful. But most of all, I think it's an opportunity really for us to examine our worldview, to revisit, check out our biases. It's good that we're always doing this. Then we can experience some benefits from this situation. But for sure, there may be some times, particularly with Mercury squaring Saturn, when something from the past can impact a conversation in the present. It's going to be fascinating. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. So Aries, your ruler Mars, forging that stunning link to the Sun, which will peak on the day after Mercury goes retrograde on the 27th, is definitely about action. And you're at your best when you're taking action. But what you've been asked to do since March 2023, I'm sorry if it does seem to be a little bit of a theme, is become more conscious of your motivations, but also your history, your deeper psychological situation, and anything to do with the past. And if you've worked through all of those things, that releases you to work in the present. So clearly the sign of Sagittarius is about expansion. It's about flexibility. It's about spontaneity. It's about change being as good as a rest. So even if you're someone who's been very dedicated and devoted and very applied in your approach to your work, your life patterns, your family life, your interests, there's still always an option for us to modify things and be open to new and fresh approaches. Now, it could be destinations that we decide to visit. It could be our interests, what we read, the TV programs to have, the amount of physical activity we do. Sagittarius is a great opportunity to be more adventurous and more in the great outdoors and get stuck in, immerse ourselves. But of course, Mercury can be about how we think. So that philosophy that I mentioned in the introduction would be particularly true of you. But I feel with Jupiter in your third house, broadly opposite Mercury in your ninth, you could find yourself really, really wanting to do something different. And if you can, create some time away, have a day off, or perhaps book a vacation. Even if you don't go on it straight away, you've got that to work towards, which can be absolutely brilliant for our spirits. But if you do feel penned in a situation and you don't feel heard, remember Mercury is about communication, and you don't feel it's a very fair environment, you're really going to question it big time. And this is where Saturn and Neptune being in the 12th house through this whole process could see you bring something to a close. So that could therefore mean that you're investigating other options. So that may mean interviews, it may mean presentations, it may mean refining your curriculum vitae, and you may need to have different versions of it to suit different opportunities. You may need to set up different connections to different players in order to bring that change to bear. But equally, you may be perfectly happy at work, and the change that you're looking for is just because life does become a little humdrum. So that part of you that does like excitement and a challenge is really what Mercury retrograde is pressing you to explore. But as well, if there is a situation that perhaps you might have been taking a little bit for granted, you might have some rethinking to do, some amendments, some information to gain to reset your position in a fresh posture. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. So Taurus, for you, Mercury goes retrograde in the 8th house. Now the 8th house is really interesting because it's where we're most invested. Mercury can definitely be about commerce. And because it's in an opposition with Jupiter, they are the two planets of trade. And Jupiter being in the 2nd house and Mercury being in the 8th, you could find yourself right through to the 3rd of January, perhaps through to the 8th when Mercury moves into the sign of Capricorn. You could find yourself doing a lot of research about different business opportunities. If you're someone who's got an entrepreneurial instinct, for example, this can be a very positive time, a very active time for you to make some changes. But it's also likely that you may need to get some seed capital. The 8th house may mean working with someone else closely. Could be an investor, could be a family member, a friend, a partner. And all of those things may require quite a lot of conversation and thinking about. But the 8th house can also be where things make way that are no longer serving our purpose. And if there are parts of your life where you could tighten up your longer term expenditure, perhaps by being a little bit more canny about your everyday costs, which is Jupiter, then that can start to put in place something that's more sustainable for the longer term. Now, the other thing that could come up for you, if you are in a relationship where you both have different approaches to money, or the direction of travel for the relationship, what you both want, there could be talking, but there could be some intense exchanges as well. So maybe something that hasn't been said could be said in quite a passionate, piercing and blunt way. Sagittarius energy can be a bit blunt, but because of the retrograde, maybe you're going to say something that you've been keeping to yourself. Because of the square to Neptune, Neptune and Saturn are in the part of your chart to do with your future. If you don't feel your future is quite set fair, that may be something that ultimately you do have to share. And if it does mean having a little bit more freedom to do what you want as an individual from a group of friends, one particular person that you hang out with a lot, or a partner, or you're wanting a better package at work and you're not feeling that that's really being respected, Mercury retrograde could see you quite frustrated about that situation because you're thinking about the long term. But with Mercury opposite Jupiter at the start of the process, and also Mars opposite Pluto, I wouldn't set your expectations too high because you could be in for quite a lot of exasperation if other people don't feel how much you care quite as keenly as you. So very much about where you're all in, emotionally, romantically, financially and business-wise, or not. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. Gemini, it's all about relationships. You have the position of the Sun, forging that great link back to Mars in your 3rd house. If there's someone you really like, the Mercury retrograde could be a signal to you to not sit on your hands about that connection, that possible connection, but actually to take that brave step forwards to reach out. But that may be something you feel quite tentative about, which would be entirely understandable. Can be quite daunting, particularly if you're using technology, and especially if you're older and technology is not really what you're used to. That in itself can be quite a challenge. The potential for crosswires is of course there with Mercury retrograde in the 7th house. Essentially it's asking you to sharpen up your listening skills, become more conscious of where the other person may be coming from and not quite so invested in how you see it. Jupiter in your sign could make you a little bit overconfident in its opposition with Mercury. In an existing relationship, it's not a great time to take anyone for granted. And with Saturn and Neptune also applying through Mercury's retrograde, when it comes to professional relationships, the potential for crosswires is great there as much as personal ones. That all sounds quite challenging, doesn't it? Let's think about the opportunities, particularly that GEMINI on December the 6th. You could clear the air. There may be something that has been a bit of a struggle in an ongoing involvement, whatever it is, a friendship, family, relationship, or with a colleague, or perhaps in a romantic sphere. If you keep working at it, if there's goodwill there to try to find an accord, there's the potential for an improvement. It's all to do with desire in a way, and it is important to just understand that when we feel that someone doesn't get us, that can create a frustration, and that can create a bit of a loneliness. But you have a gift for quick communications, and I feel that Mercury being in your opposite sign really is just asking you to be aware that just you may need to create a little bit more understanding on the other side of exactly where you're coming from. But if you don't, those crunch points with Saturn could show up. There could be some battles of will. Someone may hold you to or remind you of what you've said, and that could be a little bit uncomfortable. So some tensions at work I think are possible. It is also possible that if you're in a relationship where there's a bit of a battle for who gets their own way or not, but if you're someone who wants to achieve equilibrium, you want to celebrate the things you have in common, not just focus on the areas of the relationship where it doesn't flow so well, because every relationship has those areas, there's a great opportunity for progress. And someone potentially could come back into your life. That is possible. When people ask me, particularly on YouTube, they were right and said, do you feel that I can reconnect to an old flame? It's very difficult to answer that question because it does depend on the unique natal chart, but also it depends on what happened. For example, if both people learnt in a big way from how things didn't quite work out and have moved on in their own individual way of thinking and being, then of course there's an opportunity. But each situation is completely unique, and that's where, to be honest, natal astrology will always have that greater meaning than these broader overviews. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. So Cancer, for you, Mercury retrograde can be very much to do with life's practicalities, so the more Virgoan sphere, so anything to do with meetings, appointments, animals, if those annual inoculations, stuff like that. So there could be some cancellations or changes may be necessary to be flexible in that regard. But because there is Saturn and Neptune applying to this event in different ways, Mercury retrograde in different ways at different times, they're in the 9th house, so that can be about travel. So the detail around travel or contract, really, really important. But the other thing to be mindful of is the 6th house can be about obligations, responsibilities and commitments. And the sign of Sagittarius is about freedom. If you feel a little hemmed in, if you're the person who always seems to be the last to leave, clearing up after other people, a sense of resentment can present itself. You may, for example, not want to be the person who always has that final role, and you may want to delegate it a little bit more, and some people may be surprised and push back. Also, little details can actually have a big impact, so it's not a time, which would be uncharacteristic for you, to rush anything. And of course, with Mars and Pluto broadly in the mix, you may be talking about a financial matter, and that's entirely possible. But also with Jupiter opposite Mercury, there may be something you want to talk about to do with your welfare. You may want to go and visit a consultant of some kind, and you could get some very good information through the Mercury retrograde. So it's a possibility that you can revisit something, get a fresh view on it, and learn some greater knowledge about how you can improve even small details of your fitness, diet, exercise and well-being by becoming more aware of a wider amount of information. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. So Leo, for you, Mercury goes retrograde in the 5th house. The 5th house can be our children, it can be the parts of life that can be entertaining, fun, frivolous, joyful, playful, self-expressive. So at this time of the year when there's a lot of social activity that's usually amping up, there could be chances to connect to people in a fabulous way, particularly with Mars in your sign forging such an energized and charismatic link to the Sun. Don't let Mercury retrograde as an overall principle dim your desire to dive in and enjoy it. Perhaps you just need to be philosophical that there may be some things that don't go exactly to plan. But sometimes when that happens with Mercury retrograde, there is a larger reason. Also, the 5th house can be about speculation and risk-taking. Now, you may be one of those Leos who's very full bore when you want to try something. You may be one of those people who's much more conservative and cautious. If you are, Mercury retrograde may see you pause a little bit. Do I go on that date? Do I actually decide to buy that item? Do I go forwards with my idea, or do I take a safety first approach? Because Saturn's involved in this, Saturn's asking you to think about the long-term financial situation for sure. When it comes to romance, which the 5th house can definitely be involved with, there could be a lot of flirting, very mercurial, isn't it? And maybe you are going to take the first step forwards, but whether you really bond with someone or not is probably quite a complex thing with Saturn so involved in this particular Mercury retrograde, because that's the 8th house, what we share. For example, you could be attracted to someone who's already in a relationship. Maybe the financial side of an existing relationship is causing some problems. Maybe you want to do something that's more daring and the partner you're with is more conservative. All of those things could play out, and there may need to be conversations about it. But if you are single and you would like to meet someone, I feel that this 5th house energy, particularly because of the furnace of the Sun linking back to Mars in your sign, really could prime you up. Now obviously Mars does go retrograde on the 6th of December, which is an issue, but the opposition with Pluto in your 7th house of relationships, so if you're wanting to bring that into your life, do not let a Mercury retrograde stop you from taking some steps. Just be aware, it may not be a straight road, but you know, when you do connect to someone and it is sparkling and charismatic, if it's the right person, Mercury retrograde's not going to inhibit it. It just can, this information can just make you aware that there could be a last minute change of plan, that maybe someone that you really like doesn't quite get it and respond, which could be disappointing, but there's still plenty of chances for you to glow up at this time. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. So Virgo, for you, the Mercury retrograde in house 4 can be very much about things like home, family, emotion, of course, but also Mercury in the 4th house can see us circulate thoughts or feelings around our mind, but find it more difficult to actually express them. With Saturn also in an opposition in your 7th house, if it is around a close relationship of any kind, maybe it's about the Christmas arrangements, Neptune swirling mist as well. How you feel about things and how you think about those feelings is a big part of what this few weeks is going to be about. Doesn't mean to say it can't have opportunities though. even if someone lets you down, disappoints you, doesn't quite get it in the way you like, you can still gain. And one of the great things about yourself is that precision, but at times, sometimes your precision and concentration on a detail can prevent you or make it more difficult for you to widen your lens and see the big picture. So even if someone does niggle you a little bit, doesn't come up to your expectation, try to see what you've got. Try to go back to the heart of what your situation is about. And with the sun in your 4th house, linking back to Mars, I think it's something about a past memory, a past person who used to be influential in your life could come up in your thinking, and that person or that influence that they have can almost become much more resonant in the here and now. But if you are wanting to meet up with the folks over the festivities, there almost certainly can be some changes of plan. So if you expect things to be fluid, it will be much less of a surprise if it is actually fluid. But someone could also challenge you about some of your emotional responses, because I think one of the things that people say about Virgo people is the perfectionism. The classic popular archetype is that everything has to be totally lined up in a straight line. Whether it's CDs, books, the sort of spice charts or whatever. I don't think that's true for all Virgos. I think what is true is that you can dive into a situation and see an element of it with great clarity. And sometimes it frustrates you if people are a bit scattered and not as ordered in their approach, which is fair enough. And of course the sign of Sagittarius doesn't really want to be ordered. So your inclination towards wanting your environment to be a bit more set could be a counterpoint to someone else who's more laid back. So if you are spending some time with people over the festivities that just have different ways of doing things, try not to let it become too much of a thing for you. Just draw out and think, look, how does this generally feel? Don't get too mesmerized by the details that make things or people different. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. So Libra, for you, Mercury retrogrades the 3rd house. So 3rd house can be technology, can be modes of transport, can be text messages, emails. You're going to hear from someone you're not expecting to hear from, someone you thought would not get in touch. That contract or deal that you thought was beyond you could suddenly be back as an option. But equally, you may try to make something happen and don't hear from the people and be bitterly disappointed. And because Saturn and Neptune are applying, your desire to get your life a little more streamlined and organised, and your thinking around that, if there are frustrations, it could make you feel a little on edge. So important to just anticipate the upcoming energy. But with Mercury also arcing across the heavens to Jupiter, there can be delightful conversations. You can have some very bubbly, effervescent, charismatic interactions, and your social interaction can be very lively over the next few weeks. But yeah, it could change in the blink of an eye, because that's what happens with Mercury. But you can also find yourself pivoting. If you're single and you're chatting to someone who might seem to be very, very attractive, and then suddenly, just as that's building up, yes, another person comes into the mix that perhaps seems even more appealing. That kind of stuff, could in a positive way happen. It may be because someone else sees something in a different way. That's one of the downsides of modern internet dating, I feel. Or app dating. But a lot of lively possibilities, but you could feel a bit wired up. It's going to be important to pace yourself. You can't do everything all of the time. Give yourself an achievable plan and stick to it. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. Scorpio, Mercury going retrograde in the 2nd house can be about everyday money, everyday finance, but also it can be about our self-worth, our values. But you have such a strong link between the Sun and Mars, your traditional ruler, This could be a time when you rejig your finances. You recalibrate things in a more positive way. Don't see Mercury retrograde only in terms of the snags. Could you disagree with someone over something financial? Yes. But you can also agree with someone else about something financial. The challenge for you, I think, is more about speculation, because with Saturn and Neptune in house 5, if you are feeling more impulsive about spending money, perhaps because you want to be generous to people you really love and care for, it might not be the best time to go for it. So I would be a little bit more caution first in your approach to everyday finance. But equally, that opposition to Jupiter suggests you could start discussing something about a business opportunity, which could prove to be very exciting, even if it doesn't start actually within the term of the retrograde itself. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. Sagittarius, one of your great gifts is you are flexible. You also know that not everything goes in a straight line. You don't really want it to, because if there's variety, that's the spice of life for you, and you have lots of different strands that you tend to have interest with. But Mercury retrograde could suggest that you do start something at this time, but then it doesn't quite go to plan, which in itself could be very, very frustrating. But the plan that eventually unfolds could actually be the right plan for you. And because Saturn and Neptune in your 4th house apply to this, it may be something that's to do with a home issue, like where to live, who with, some changes or improvements. Or maybe someone close to you sees your new and exciting idea as being ridiculous and doesn't hold back from telling you, which could be very hard to hear. Equally, because Mars and Pluto are in an opposition, the sphere of ideas is a fierce battleground at the moment, but you do have the Sun in your sign linking back to Mars in your 9th house. If ever there was a time actually to think about getting away from it and giving yourself a little bit of distance from some of the everyday demands, this would be it. But it may be that home, emotional and family constraints may prevent you from breaking out in the way that you would like, and that can create some frustrations. Equally, Mercury retrograde could see you rethink something that's been ongoing for some while, make some adaptations to it, and that could work out well for you. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General, Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. So Capricorn, Mercury retrograde in the 12th house can be a fabulous opportunity to be nostalgic. You know, this is the time of the year when the people who are no longer with us, either through locality or who've passed over, or perhaps past relationships, we can be very nostalgic, and you may feel that quite strongly. The 12th house is also the part of life that some of us can be quite reluctant to look at. So that can be to do with our vulnerabilities, our fears, our anxieties. It can be giving ourselves permission to stop, pause and take that rest. It could be a need to become more aware of some subconscious attitudes that we may have as well. So all of those things can play out in Mercury in the 12th. You may also hear from someone from your past. Maybe an old flame, could be someone you went to school with, college, worked with in the past, and actually hearing from them can be something that's very heartwarming. If you are someone who has a real appreciation of the traditionality of Christmas, this can be actually something that really does pull at your heartstrings. But because your ruler Saturn is applying to Mercury in these squares, and did so in November as well, unfortunately, I also think you could become more conscious of who you can't quite rely upon. This is not a time for fair weather friends. Stick to the people that you really feel comfortable and secure with, because if you do share something that's a bit more sensitive, or share a vulnerability with someone that you don't really know, or perhaps hasn't got your best interests at heart, it could be seized upon with a relish. So whether it's at work, whether it's in your social situation or romantically, I would be a little bit protective of your inner world, but with the right person and the right people, you may find yourself wanting to open up. But I generally think it can be a time when you may just want to draw back within yourself somewhat. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. So Aquarius, Mercury in the 11th house going retrograde could see you rethink some kind of long-term plan. But then again, you may be examining people in your network, your circle, perhaps your long-term interests. Some of your higher ideals could be very much part of the process of the Mercury retrograde. You're scrutinizing things, but in order to get a clearer understanding of what the right way forward can be for you. But also, the 11th house can be very jolly, a great time to get together with people in a festive way. But because of the retrograde, of course, things might not go exactly to plan. Possibly you will hear from someone you haven't heard from for some while. Or you could find that you want a little bit of freedom from certain people that you're fond of, but because the sign of Sagittarius, like Aquarius, appreciates that perspective of independence, because your traditional ruler Saturn is in the second house, if there are certain friendships or organisations or groups which you felt a bit beholden to, or they cost you money that you haven't necessarily got, you may want to just have a bit of space and just float a little bit, very mutable, and just gather your thoughts. However, if you are quite a sociable being, the Sun's link to Mars is fantastic. And of course, Mars linking back to Pluto early in your sign is a pump action for you to come centre stage. So you may find yourself really organising or being part of some kind of network where you can still be an individual. It might not quite get the green light exactly at this moment. That could happen fully when the Sun moves into your sign on the 19th of January, joining up with Pluto on the 21st, but also when Mercury itself moves into Aquarius on the 28th of January. But what you set in motion now could all start to really happen at quite a pace at that particular time. Please check out your free gift of your Zodiac General Love, Chinese and Vedic forecasts when you order your year 2025 personal horoscope. Please see below for more. So Pisces, Mercury in the 10th house could be your connection to your work or the wider world. If you're someone who has a lot to do with your local community, charitable activities, you work in some kind of council or committee role, maybe you're going to rethink some of those obligations. But of course, for many people, the 10th house is about work, goals and ambitions. And if you feel that you're not really getting the recognition you deserve, one thing you might decide to do at this time is explore the potential to retrain, reskill, or use old skills but in an adapted, fresh way. With Mars in your 6th house forging such a stunning link to the Sun, your energy and vitality at this time can be very strong. It's just that because Saturn and Neptune apply to this Mercury retrograde, you need to make sure that any ideas that you're propagating, perhaps for your own business, for example, or if you're putting together some kind of proposal for a boss, that it's really rooted in firm facts and detail. And you can be a little idealistic at times, very imaginative, but someone may want to see the steely reality of what you're proposing. And if they feel that you're floating a little bit aimlessly and not really getting exactly what your role's about, you may find that there's some criticism or scrutiny that could come your way. But remember, Mercury retrogrades are about opportunities. If you're working with or for people you don't enjoy it, look around, make sure that you're forging the connections to change your situation in a dynamic and positive way. Thank you so much for joining me for this Mercury retrograde special. Please check out your year 2025 deep dive zodiac forecast by clicking on the link beneath this video.